The Violet Reaper, Chapter 1. Alexander, a Devonian warrior from the country of Galvan, lay bleeding amongst the slain bodies of his brothers in arms after an unforeseen ambush. Their foes, the sworn enemies of his countrymen, were merciless and swift. Alexander clung to life only long enough to watch them desecrate his men's bodies. They stole anything of value and burned what they saw as worthless. Finally, after they threw his broken and maimed body onto a pile of corpses, Alexander died. "Where am I?" He hung weightless in an endless void of darkness, except for one thing, an old wooden door. Almost as if he were compelled to do so, Alexander opened the door and walked through. The void disappeared and was replaced by a strange foreign room. The walls, wooden and old, were decorated with unfamiliar things. Images of people, odd weapons, and animals that were certainly dead, but looked as if they'd been preserved. "Have a seat, partner," a stranger sitting at the other end of a room, facing away from Alexander, offered. Confused, he agreed and sat at the oddly shaped table. "Where am I? Am I dead?" "Yep," the man answered and turned towards him. This man, whoever he was dead as well. His body had no skin, blood, or muscles. He was merely bones. His eyes, or rather where his eyes would have been, were instead replaced by purple flames. "But don't worry, that might change soon." He gestured towards the other being, in a similar state to himself, who stood behind the strange table. "Bartender, one for his nerves and one for me." The bartender poured a brown liquid into a fine glass and handed one to each of the two. Alexander took a sip of it. "Is this fire wine? My men and I would drink whatever we could after a battle, but this was always what we started with." He drank the rest of it and held the empty glassware carefully in his hands. "I don't understand. What is happening? Who are you?" The skeleton opened his mouth and poured the whole drink into it all at once. It seeped out of the spaces between his teeth as he spoke. "I've been called many names, but Warden will suffice for you." "You're a jailer. Does that mean I've gone to the pits?" "Not just yet, and if you're lucky, maybe not at all. Instead, I've got an offer for you, Alexander," Warden stated and turned his flaming gaze towards him. "I want you to hunt someone down." "Who?" "Anyone. Everyone. Doesn't matter who until it does. I won't be a killer for no reason, even if that means that You won't be killing anyone. Everyone I plan to send you after is already dead." "That doesn't... I still don't understand." "You folk rarely do. We'll call them escapees. People who saw what they were in for and managed, one way or another, to avoid it." "I didn't realize." "That's because you weren't supposed to. As you can imagine, we don't want folk finding out about stuff like this."
"So why me?"
"You're a warrior, ain't you? We need folk like that. Truth is, you come closer to death more times than anyone else currently alive. You've peered into the abyss enough to make most men go mad, all without batting an eye. Shoot, you enjoyed it most of the time. Well, that's why you..."
"Okay. So what if I say no?"
"You're more than welcome to refuse. You can take your chances with what comes next, or you can earn some goodwill first." Alexander thought for a moment. This wasn't at all like he'd been taught, but he also couldn't ignore the evidence before his eyes.
"What do I have to do, and how do I do it?"
The warden reached into his long red coat with his bony hands and pulled out a small brown object, then placed the tip of it into his eye. He held it there until the end began to smolder. Then he moved the other end to his mouth and held it with his teeth. "You fight. I would think you already know how to do that."
"But how do I kill something that has already died?"
"With this." The warden then removed the object from his teeth, grabbed Alexander by the wrist of his right hand, held it down, and slammed the smoldering tip into his palm.
"Ah!"
Alexander screamed out in agony as his flesh charred and cooked. Finally, Warden pulled the object away and released Alexander's hand. He yanked the hand to his chest, clenching his wrist tightly.
"Why?"
"Quit your belly aching and look at your hand," Warden instructed. He did and saw it glowed with the same purple as Warden's flames. "Now think of a weapon." Alexander looked angrily from Warden back to his hand, then thought of his sword.
When I was a child, my father gave me a sword. It was one his father had given him when he was just a boy. He had worn it on his hip every time he went into battle, and treated it like his most cherished possession.
Suddenly the sword was in his hand, and the blade was surrounded in purple flames.
Amazing!
Not really, Warden said and stuck the object back into his teeth. But that doesn't matter. Now you know the how, and you know the why, so all that's left is the when and the who. Okay, so who? I'll let you know. Warden then removed the object from his teeth and blew smoke into Alexander's eyes. They burned like they had gotten sand into them, but as soon as he could open them again, he realized he was back in that void once more. Then a bright flash engulfed him, and he was back where he had died. The bodies of his brothers had gone cold, and he was left alone. He started to wonder if he had just imagined it, if any of it was real, until a burning pain and a purple glow from the palm of his hand cleared away any doubts. A small voice, harsh and familiar, said quietly, "Talk to you soon, partner." Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you made it this far, great! Congratulations! That's an achievement. Wait, do I actually have to say that part? It's in the script. Whatever. Hey, I just want to give a quick shout out to all my patrons on Patreon. You guys really help me out a lot. Your name's going off across the screen right now. And to Aaron Clark, a very special thank you. He was the very first patron who supported me on Patreon. And he came out straight out of the gate, highest tier. I really appreciate that. Okay, by now it's done, so bye.